What is up, Packers fans, and welcome back to the Daily Draft, brought to you by Badger State Brewing in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I am your host and the publisher of Packer Report, Ross Uglem, and today, so very excited to talk about MarShawn Lloyd. MarShawn, I think, was my most visceral positive reaction to getting, the little update that we get so we can start pre-writing the story, of who they've taken before it goes up to the broadcast. When I saw that come through on the DMs that it was Lloyd, that was awesome. Again, I feel like it's not okay. I had him ranked at 40 and they took him at 88 because I didn't. I actually had him ranked right around where they took him, but the fit and what he can bring to Green Bay, I think, is so exciting. And to talk some MarShawn Lloyd with me, someone who covered him for 24/7 Sports, Chris Trevino. Chris, man, how are you? Who are you? What do you do? Are you ready to talk some MarShawn Lloyd?
I am very ready to talk some MarShawn Lloyd. I'm Chris Trevino. Thanks for having me. I am your 24/7 brethren. I cover USC football for USCfootball.com on the Peristyle, so you can find me there if you're interested. But yeah, I'm ready to talk some MarShawn Lloyd with you.
We talk about sometimes with these 24/7 things where we were talking earlier about like a high school showcase, developing these relationships with guys as they come in. It almost is never the case anymore, or I shouldn't say never the case, but it's becoming more and more rare. I've had these conversations about a bunch of players, and I think the only one that was really like that, or I guess there were two, although the writer hadn't been there that long, were Jordan Morgan and Edgerrin Cooper. Tyron Hopper, Florida, and then Mizzou. Evan Williams, Fresno State, and then Oregon. MarShawn Lloyd, South Carolina, and then USC. How do you think that, or I guess, how long have you known MarShawn, and did you cover that transfer?
I did cover that transfer. I only knew MarShawn for one season, the season that he was here at USC. But in a little twist of fate, he's from the East Coast area. He's from Delaware, but he actually played at my high school in the DC, Washington area, DeMatha Catholic High School. And I'll talk a little bit about that later and how that played into his relationship with Caleb Williams. But yeah, I only covered him for the one season. He, transferred in from South Carolina. I still remember when he did commit. It was kind of a out of nowhere kind of commitment. We knew USC needed a running back for the season after losing Travis Dye, their top running back from the 2022 campaign. So it made sense for them in terms of fit. And, he was an explosive runner, dynamic kind of guy, also from the DMV area, as I mentioned, as that's an area that USC has taken interest to. But yeah, I still remember, when he committed, I was in San Antonio, Texas, covering the All-American Bowl down there. So I had to, bust out that story really quick. So MarShawn Lloyd was definitely a big pickup for USC and was a really talented player for the Trojans this season, despite, not having the team success that they wanted.
How do you think that all came together? The landscape is so interesting. That have to do with NIL. I assume USC is pretty strong in the NIL game. You mentioned the connection there between Caleb Williams and frankly, regardless of if they knew each other, Caleb's such a figurehead in college football, coming off a Heisman Trophy. Who wouldn't want to go maybe try to play with Caleb? How do you think that whole thing came together, and what was your feeling about, as you mentioned, sort of a surprise transfer?
Yeah, I think there was a bunch of factors, and I'll talk about the Caleb one last. But I think the big one is that Lincoln Riley and USC have been very successful in recruiting transfer running backs. They always seem to get one really talented one, and I think that speaks to the offense that Lincoln Riley has. You talk to any of the running backs that they've signed over the last couple of years, especially the transfer ones, it's like, I wanted the opportunity to play in this Lincoln Riley offense, which is a spread offense, but it does highlight and showcases the running back. It has a really big run game component. Now, that run game component was a little bit wonky last season, and we'll talk about that further down the line. But the run game in this Lincoln Riley offense is something that highlights running backs, and that's something, they sold them on. That's something that Lincoln Riley sold them on. So they wanted to come play in that. NIL obviously plays a factor these days, especially out of the transfer portal. USC does have a really strong NIL when it comes to transfers. If you ask USC fans about their NIL with high schoolers, that's a different story, and that's a big point of contention right now on our boards. But NIL for transfers is pretty strong for them. That makes them very competitive. And just the added piece of, recruiting running backs goes hand in hand. Then the Caleb piece is the other thing. Caleb coming off that year, was like a vortex, just trying to pull in as many guys as they can so they can make a run for a national championship, for a college football playoff spot. And then just to have the connection with MarShawn Lloyd, they both played against each other in the same youth football leagues growing up from that area. They both played against each other in high school. MarShawn Lloyd went to DeMatha, my high school. Caleb Williams went to Gonzaga, the biggest rival for DeMatha. They played against each other in high school. MarShawn Lloyd joked about, it was always when we were growing up, I was on the other side, he was on the other side. They couldn't stop him. They couldn't stop me. Just wanted to team up together and be on part of a team. And you'll hear this on the broadcast for Caleb Williams for games next season, but they'll talk about that historic, legendary comeback win that he led against the Math in the championship game his sophomore season. He threw a last-minute Hail Mary, game-expiring walk-off buzzer beater Hail Mary. MarShawn Lloyd was on the other side. He was against DeMatha that lost that game against Caleb Williams. So they go back. They have history. So Caleb Williams, he mentioned that he texted MarShawn Lloyd. He said, "Hey, come to USC. Let's win a championship. Let's go to the league together." Obviously, they didn't win a championship together, but they did go to the league, and we'll be seeing them play against each other a lot in the future.
Say, and now one's a Packer and one is a Bear. Super unique height weight combo. There are very few backs in NFL history that are 5'9" or shorter, but 220 or more. The most famous example easily is Emmitt Smith, but I mean, it's not, there are not a lot of guys built like MarShawn Lloyd in the league. And honestly, it's a little bit insane that he moves like that. What was it like just kind of watching him play?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I saw him like in person, it was at our media day, and he walked in and he kind of turns heads because it's such a unique height weight combo. As you said, it's like, does it really work? He's like a bowling ball. I know bowling ball is probably like a scouting term that you've seen all over for MarShawn Lloyd, but it's true. Just like go up next to him and you're gonna be like so impressed. Like, how does this work? It's just a unique situation to see him in, and I think Packers fans, when they see him up close, they're going to be like, "Whoa, this is kind of cool." And yeah, he's all the teammates would talk about him when they first got there at spring camp, and it was like, this guy's different. This guy moves different. This guy is elusive. This guy is dynamic. This guy is explosive. Those are kind of things you were hearing first of all, and he's so strong and athletic and twitchy looking that it makes sense when you see him, make a cut or explode out of the hole or bounce outside and beat the tackler on the edge or whatever. You can see it when you're looking at him up close. It's like, okay, you see how twitchy this guy looks. You see how strong he is. Again, it is a unique combination, but like all his teammates were just like so impressed with him when he got here and were just raving about the plays he was making in spring camp. We couldn't see all the plays. We don't get full access to watching them, but yeah, consistently teammates were talking about how he was making play after play in fall camp and in spring camp and how explosive he was.
Oh, I've mentioned this before. If you just watch MarShawn Lloyd's highlight tape, you would say this is the best back in the class. What are we even really talking about? The highs are so incredibly high, but the lows are kind of low as well. Do you think, is there a way to find some more consistency in his game, or do you feel like it's just part of who he is, that he's going to try and score basically every time he touches the ball, or at least try to do something that's just truly insane? Because that was my feeling watching him play, was like, man, he doesn't even understand what 3 yards in a cloud of dust is.
Yeah, I think that's the big question with him is, can you get to that higher floor for him and not, be so feast and famine all the time. Yeah, I think that's something that's yeah, I think that's possible. I mean, he's still, a young guy. He's going to have to learn in the NFL. I definitely think that can be pulled out of him, finding that consistency, because if he wants to have a long career in the NFL, he's going to have to find that. I think a little bit of the team context as well, because USC's offensive line really wasn't it last year, and a lot of people were banking on them to be it last year. So I think that also played a little bit into MarShawn Lloyd's kind of struggles at times. They were giving up plays in the backfield a lot, and I think there was a little bit of like the need for the offense to carry that team. So it felt like everyone from Caleb to MarShawn to everyone was trying to score on every play because they had to. Their defense was so bad. So I think that put a little bit extra pressure on everyone on the offense to have a home run play every time, because if they didn't, they were going to lose that game because the defense was going to give up 10 more touchdowns or what have you. But yes, he does need to find more consistency in his game. But that's what NFL coaching is for. You got a guy with some really great talents and traits, and next you got to get him to the next level, which is being a more consistent back every play, and not so boom or bust.
So Packers GM Brian Gutekunst, and so when we talk about boomer bust, I think one of the biggest busts that everybody kind of talks about with MarShawn is fumbling, putting the ball on the turf, right? And Brian got asked that question. What did you think of the fumbles, or why you're obviously unconcerned with the fumbles enough to draft him, right? And he called MarShawn's issues correctable. Do you feel like that's the case? Do you think that was there some bad luck there, or just sort of a simple thing that could be fixed? Why do you think the Packers are so convinced that this young man can stop putting the ball on the turf?
Yeah, that was kind of the big knock on him, obviously, because I don't remember when I was looking at him. I don't remember the fumbles being an issue out of South Carolina, but I could be wrong on that. I was more concerned about the injury issues that he had at South Carolina. Tore an ACL, got banged up in 2022, missed time, and I think that was kind of the bigger red flag for him coming to USC. But then kind of the fumbles obviously became the story with MarShawn Lloyd. He had a couple of really bad fumbles. I believe there was one, I can't remember the game, that was a real backbreaker for them. Yeah, I mean, fumbling is a thing that I think can be fixed. I don't think it can be completely wiped away. I think there's guys who have fumbling issues in college and still have fumbling issues in NFL, but I think there's some guys that can, get better at it. They still fumble, but it's not at the rate that they had in college. So I'm, on the side of optimistic that he can improve that fumbling aspect, keeping the ball higher and tight. USC worked a lot on fumbling drills, and they had a really good coach, Kyle McDonald, who's now with the Chargers. He was a guy who produced high level talent. So I think, I think he can do it. But again, I think it was also just being unfocused. I think that was a lot of the time, worrying about making that big play or making that big cut. He would lose focus of holding on to that ball the way he was supposed to. And that's why he was coughing up some of those balls.
Why do you think USC didn't ask him to catch it more? 13 receptions in 11 games, basically meaning one per. And I'm sure it wasn't there are probably games where he had 3 and then 2 games where he had 0, right? I thought he looked really natural at it, and he was very, very good at the Senior Bowl when they asked him to run routes and catch the football. So I'm just kind of wondering in Lincoln, is it Lincoln's offense? Why was that not used, I guess?
He is really natural with the ball, and I wish he did catch more passes at USC. Pass catching is actually a huge component of Lincoln Riley's offense. He loves running backs that can catch out of the backfield. That gives his offense another little dangerous element and wrinkle that you have to prepare for as a defensive coordinator and a defense. And yeah, I was kind of surprised by the lack of passes that went his way, and just across the board in general, because in 2022, just throw a little team context at you. In 2022, they were throwing the ball. They had about 64 receptions for their 3 running backs out of the backfield. They had a really good pass catching back, Travis Dye, who caught 46 passes the year before at Oregon, and then Austin Jones, he caught 25 passes in 2022, actually led the team for the running backs. But across the board, they had around 60 receptions between the 3 running backs that they used. And then it really dropped off this past season to about less than 30. So you can see it was a half a drop off right there. And I don't really have a good answer as to why they weren't throwing the ball. My theory is that, as I mentioned, that offense had so much pressure on them to get the home run plays down the field. Caleb was looking to make a play down the field all the time. A lot of running around, a lot of scrambling. That offensive line wasn't putting him in great positions, trying to extend the play. Didn't really suit the running back pass at that point. He was always looking downfield, didn't want to take the middle route, the safe 5-yard pass. He was looking for that, 25-yard pass or that 50-yard bomb or things like that. So that's why I think that the running back numbers were low, just because that offense felt the need to go down the field a lot more than they did in 2022. They could be more balanced in 2022, and that wasn't the case in 2023.
It might be tough, right? Because your relationship with MarShawn was so short. But this is kind of how we've been wrapping up every show, which is basically what can Packers fans expect from MarShawn Lloyd as a person? It's a big deal, right? And I would say not that people don't care in LA, but it's different. Like LA has everything. LA has the UCLA. LA has two pro baseball teams, two pro basketball teams. And also there's a ton of other things to do in Los Angeles, a ton that have nothing to do with sports. Green Bay is the Packers, so people get super invested in these guys as people and how they carry that tradition. What can folks expect from MarShawn Lloyd as a person? And then what do you think they're getting as a football player?
I think from a person part, I just want to say when Marshawn Lloyd was available to speak to the media, he was always one of the most popular scrums to go to because, in USC, they give you like six players at once or whatever, and you have to kind of choose who you want to go to. Marshawn Lloyd always drew a scrum, and that is a testament to his personality. He wasn't super over the top already, but he was a funny guy, a personable guy, more low key, wasn't again not a rah-rah kind of guy, loud, but he would crack jokes. He's got a great smile, very personable, and that's what we liked as a media and talking to him. He was honest, and he was truthful, and he gave you good quotes. And I think that's something to be said. Obviously when you're a football player, you're gonna be talking to media a lot. We liked talking to Marshawn Lloyd. We liked Marshawn Lloyd. No one ever had a bad thing to say about Marshawn Lloyd. So you're getting a genuine person in that, and someone who's well liked, kept his head down a lot, hard worker. Those are the traits that we saw in Marshawn Lloyd. We were covering him for this team. Really great guy. Obviously he's coming from my neck of the woods, so I got a little bit of a plus there, just coming from area. And just as a football player, it's cliche, but you're getting a dog. This is a guy who's gonna put in the work. He's gonna be a hard worker. He's gonna do whatever he can to get better. Stay late after practices. Explosive guy. I really hope that he makes it in the NFL. I think he's going to have a long career. And actually, I'm very excited because actually a couple hours before we went on this podcast, I actually got him in my dynasty league. So I'm very happy that I was able to grab Marshawn Lloyd in the third round, a steal.
An absolute steal, as I think the Packers might have gotten a steal in the real third round. Chris, thank you so much for your time, man. We really appreciate your insight, and we appreciate you coming on to talk some MarShawn Lloyd.
Of course. Have him back anytime when he wins Rookie of the Year or something.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you guys so much for watching or listening. If you are on the podcast side, thanks once again to Badger State Brewing in Green Bay, Wisconsin. You can follow me. I am at Ross Uglem on X, formerly known as Twitter. Check us out over at Packer Report and do everything that you are supposed to do here on the Pack a Day Podcast YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, click the bell, and get the notifications so that you can get every ounce of Packers content that you require on a daily basis. Have a great rest of your day, folks, and go Pack Go.